Thanks so much for joining us today, and welcome to Beyond, a training of free and funded digital design support for non-profits working with families during their early years and to support financial wellbeing. Today I'm really excited to introduce Teo, who's Innovation Director at Shift, who's kicking off our 6-week training programme with an introduction to design thinking and how it can help your organisation adapt in times of crisis. Just a couple of quick housekeeping reminders before we kick off. You can't be seen by the presenters, but you can use the chat function to make comments, share agreements, and to have side chats or ask any questions throughout. And we're also going to be fielding questions using the Q&A function. So if you have any questions as you go along, please pop them in the box. This session is going to be recorded and it will be available on the Beyond blog after the event. And yeah, please message me or Amelia at Beyond directly if you have any technical issues during the session, and we'll try and resolve them. But yeah, enough from me. I'll hand over to Teo.
Thanks so much, Emily. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining this Beyond training, how design thinking can help your organization adapt in times of crisis. In today's session, we'll be giving you an introduction to design thinking, which is basically a secret weapon for your organization in times like this. As Emily said, this has been set up as a Zoom webinar, so I can't see any of you, which is pretty strange. So please do say hi as I see you're all doing. Hi, Tineke, lovely to see you. And let me know who's there, and also use it all the way throughout to give me comments and let me know what does and doesn't resonate. And I'd also, as Emily said, be fielding some questions at the end of the session. So we will have some dedicated time to do Q&A then. As Emily also said, this session will be recorded and made available after the session. So you'll have it to hand if you want to watch it back or if you want to share it. So for those of you who don't know me, I am just trying to, I think I've still got control of the screen. Yep. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Teo Madupin. I'm Innovation Director at the award-winning social design charity Shift. Shift focuses on helping organizations to basically play their best role and work collectively in the fight against systemic social equity issues, things that impact childhoods and food systems and finances and mental health, especially amongst people living on low incomes. Here are some of the projects we've been working on over the last little while and things that we're working on currently. We're also really excited to be the organisation who's behind the Beyond programme. So I've spent the last 10 years working as a design thinker with a deep passion for what I think of like the human side of business, health and social equity challenges. And I love designing solutions that put humans or humanity at the center of innovation. And I've been working in this field for a long time and with a wide variety of partners, including Samsung and Barclays and Omnicom, and people like Wellcome Trust, Alphabet X and NSPCC. I'm also proud to currently be on the board of trustees for a small theatre company called Theatre Centre, which is a charity that brings original productions into schools. If you don't know them, check them out. And I'm currently obsessed with some things you can see on the screen, including ramen, plants, design activism, which I've really been fostering this year in my own practice, and my cute little 3-year-old niece you can see in the top of the screen. So I'm really looking forward to taking you through this 1-hour introduction to design thinking today. In the session, we're going to be covering what design thinking is, what it can be used for, and how it can nurture it, how you can nurture it in your nonprofit. We'll also have time for Q&A at the end, but please do feel free to share questions all the way through. This is really aimed to be a really quick introduction to people who are new to design thinking, and I hope it will give you a flavor of what design thinking is and how it can be applied as a powerful problem-solving tool. We hope you can find it really useful, but we also hope that it provides a helpful jumping off point for further learning, either through your own exploration or through some upcoming training that we have as part of the Beyond programme. So let's begin. What is design thinking? So the first thing that I always say is that everything is designed. Sometimes this design happens mindfully, as is the case with this app, Noom, whose designers have like meticulously designed every single element of it to make it easy to maintain a healthy weight and diet. Or this app, Stride, which is created by Lauren Curry OBE and is aimed to democratize leadership. So it's perfectly designed for women, young leaders, and leaders of color. And IKEA also, which is actually my favorite design example, because they use every single touch point in their store to maximize inspiration, attention, and basket size. However, design is often accidental. I'll share with you a few of my favorite accidental design examples now. Oh, I don't want to miss over this one. I love this. If you're under 18, please state why. I just think that's a brilliant question. And I mean, some examples are more serious. So here are a few examples of those. And here's a personal example. So over 2 years ago now, one of my best friends got pregnant. And when she was looking up what she could expect, she came across this content on the NHS website. And I have massive respect for the NHS website. So this is just an example. So this she was looking at because she wanted to know what she could expect. And this is obviously designed in response to the question, how can we help women know what to expect when it comes to stretch marks during pregnancy and after birth? This content design solution, however, came as really a bit of a shock to my friend, because as a Black woman of Caribbean descent, the only stretch marks she'd ever had were neither purple nor pink. So needless to say, she sent a strongly worded letter, as it seems I think a few other people had, and later in the year it was changed to this. And I share this example only because whether you're designing mindfully or not, the decisions you make every day in your organization and the way you solve challenges has a profound effect on the people who will use your product and service, how they'll use them, the outcomes your service can achieve, and the impact you will have in the communities you serve. Involving people from outside of your organization in your decision making and your problem solving, especially involving those who you support day to day, is a really powerful way to make sure you're finding and designing solutions that will resonate and really work. And that's basically the basis of design thinking. It's just an approach to making decisions and solving problems that brings perspectives from outside of your organization inside. So by involving the outside perspectives of your service users, your partners, people like your competitors, volunteers, and employees, you are better able to identify solutions that have a good chance of being well received, or rather a better chance that they'll drive the outcomes you intend. It basically is a process that uses outside in thinking to pay attention to the people, systems, evidence, and inspiration from outside your organization. It uses this inspiration to break down challenges into manageable and accessible chunks. It helps you figure out what works by testing it with others. And then it helps you to learn quickly and cheaply by making your ideas, your solutions, your products and services public as early as you possibly can. So this is an approach that has been used by businesses across the world to tackle their trickiest challenges. It's an approach that I've used everywhere from large corporations like Pfizer and Colgate to growing underfunded startups like the ones we spin out of Shift. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a flavor now of what it can be specifically used for. So here's a first example. Last year at Shift, we worked in partnership with a housing association called One Manchester. Many of you will know them, to see what could we do to support tenants who were struggling financially. Now, this is a complex problem with lots of potential routes and lots of potential options. And during that time, what the team did was they paid attention to the experiences of tenants and experts on financial support and debt advice. They looked at what else was out there that could actually currently support people with financial crisis, and they spoke with people across the One Manchester team. They then used what they heard to break down the challenge, and they identified smaller, more specific issues, namely how to support tenants during that 5-week wait for the first payment of universal credit, because this felt important to everyone they spoke to, but also really manageable for the team. They then came up with and tested ideas with the tenants that they hoped to support, and with experts and with the One Manchester team. And then they put something into the world that was small and imperfect to see if it would work. And this was the result. A universal credit pack, which provides useful, timely information and options to tenants who have applied for universal credit. And the result is that the number of tenants who engaged in One Manchester's financial support doubled from the norm. So another example, and I've got a few of these, so you'll have a few to get stuck into. So early in the pandemic, we were approached by the CEO of a national family support charity, Home Start, to see what a collection of charities could do together to support parents giving birth during lockdown. This again was a pretty tricky problem, given that there's 12,000 babies born each week. The fact that there is a lot of activity happening in the UK at the time, albeit in pretty patchy ways, and that it felt really counterproductive to do anything that would compete with organisations at times of scarcity. So to help answer this question, we again paid attention to what parents, people supporting them, and charities across the UK were doing and what they saw as the biggest needs. We used what we heard to break down a challenge and identify smaller, more specific issues, namely the issue of individuals championing and advocating for parents and caring for parents in their respective communities who were doing this with little recognition, little funding, and little support. And we chose that because it felt more really important to the people we spoke to, but most importantly, it felt manageable within the limited time and budget we had. We then tested some ideas with people we hope to support. And again, we put something small and imperfect into the world to test if it would work. And the result was Parent People Boosts, which is a digital care package that shows care and support to individuals, pouring time and energy into supporting parents through Zoom sessions and WhatsApp groups and Instagram communities and more. And so far, it's reached around 2,000 people across the UK. One more example, well, not one more, there's a few more, but another example. In early 2020, this was actually before lockdown, at the very early stages of the coronavirus pandemic, we worked with the Wellcome Trust to ask what we could do to tackle the spread of misinformation online. Again, this is absolutely not a small challenge. This is a massive conundrum, one of those ones that we'll be grappling with for quite a while in our time. So to move forward towards an answer, and I think you get the deal now, we paid attention to what else was going on around the globe to tackle misinformation on social media. We spoke to experts. We looked at how other fields like counterterrorism, mental health, and anti-bullying had approached similar challenges. We used all of that information to break down the challenge. We identified a smaller, more specific issue that we felt we could tackle, namely the need to stop over-focusing on or promoting error moments or misinformation or bad information, as we were actually just giving them more airtime than we wanted them to have or they deserved. So we focused there again because it was really important to the people we collaborated with, and it felt like it was really manageable for the Wellcome Trust. And we shared and tested our ideas with people amongst who we hoped it would have an impact and put something small and imperfect into the world to see if it would work. And this was the result, a really early website, which we used to socialize the idea of focusing on a healthy internet rather than an unhealthy one. And I mean, it didn't reach as far as we hoped, but it taught us a lot, and it got really good conversations started nonetheless. And another one for you, actually the last one. So towards the beginning of lockdown, we heard from so many charities who were struggling to keep up with the escalation of acute needs. Many needed to pivot to online delivery quickly. Many had to close temporarily. Some actually, unfortunately, had to close for good. We are personally an organization dedicated to supporting nonprofits to do their best work and play their best roles. And so we really wanted to find a way to support a high volume of charities who needed to turn digital almost overnight. So we, again, paid attention to what else was going on to support charities at this time. We spoke to organizations like yourselves and others who we wanted to support. And we used all of that information to break down the challenge and identify a smaller, more specific issue, namely the need to build core adaptive skills that could help organizations adapt and respond in this crisis, but also in the future, because this felt important to the people we spoke to, and it really felt manageable for Shift. We shared and tested our ideas with other support providers and a handful of charities that we hoped we could help. And then we put something small and imperfect in the world to see if it would work. And the result, of course, was Beyond, a program of digital and design support that focuses on building core adaptable skills and networks of learning amongst organizations like yours. And within 4 weeks, over 200 civil society organizations had signed up. But more crucially than that, we learned a ton about what we should and shouldn't do as a program like this evolves. So I think, as you see through those examples, we use design thinking more like a mindset than a process. And this is, I think, the best way to think about it. It's a mindset that prioritizes those 4 things. It prioritizes paying attention to people, systems, evidence, and inspiration from outside your organization, breaking down the challenge into manageable, accessible chunks, figuring out what works by testing it with others, and making your ideas, your solutions, your products and services public as early as you possibly can. And these 4 mindsets can be found in the very, very many design thinking frameworks that you'll see and find online, including these, but also this one, which is the most famous one, I think, the double diamond, which was popularized by the Design Council back in 2005. Essentially, all of these different models are just asking you those same 4 questions. How are you seeking evidence, inclusion, and inspiration from outside your 4 walls? How are you working from outside with this outside evidence to break down challenges and make them more manageable? How are you figuring out what does and doesn't work by testing your ideas? And how are you getting your work into the real world early? And you can apply these mindsets at any time and in any order, but together they're a really powerful way to get you unblocked, detangle complexity, prioritize your options and ideas, and make really concrete progress towards any big challenge you have. And for that reason, design thinking mindsets are like a secret weapon for uncertain and changing times. Times, I guess, like the ones we're living in right now, and the ones that I know that all of you are experiencing in your respective organizations. Throughout the pandemic, and also over the past 4 weeks, since Beyond launched, we've actually been speaking with and hearing from organizations like yours who are supporting families in the early years or supporting people's financial well-being about some of the knotty challenges that you're facing in your sectors. And we've already heard about challenges like this. How might we find new ways of having conversations about money and debt advice in ways that are remote but also for human? Or this, how might we find ways to help signpost and refer parents in a more friendly, less overwhelming way? Or how might we find prototype new remote delivery models that really do support people who don't have data or devices? How can we create pain-free ways to support people who are making benefit claims? And what could we do to find better ways to support the individuals and orgs who are caring for parents who are hardest hit by COVID-19. So because I've rambled and I need a drink, I would love to take a pause there to just ask you to write in the chat some of the tricky challenges that you're facing in your organizations or your sectors since the pandemic hit, in light of the pandemic and also the racial equity movement. So I'm going to take a pause and a drink and let you add some comments in the chat. So I see some of the issues around events being face-to-face, and actually working out how you can have that support when you're not able to be in contact with parents. Amazing. Providing support for most vulnerable and digitally excluded.
Sorry, Taya, just to interrupt. Guys, if you write to all panelists, it will only come up for the panelists. So you can't see each other. So we either need to read them out, or if you write to all panelists and other attendees, then that will be shown to each other. Sorry, Taya.
That's great. Maintaining human connections. I'll keep reading ones out, but please, if you have already posted, do repost to all panelists and all attendees so everyone can enjoy. Thank you. Maintaining human connections, again, important. How to support residents remotely who can't manage to use technology to share paperwork. Helping financially and mentally vulnerable people regain control of finances. So please do keep those coming because these are really important. But as you can see, just reading these are not simple questions. They are not straightforward. They can be really tricky to find good solutions for. And I think, I'm not going to speak for you, but they can feel big and quite insurmountable. It can also be hard to figure out where to start, and they can often throw up lots of competing priorities. And often the best solutions that we come up with can feel quite risky or costly to pursue. So the design thinking mindsets can help you to chip away at these challenges or these issues by giving you really useful clues and evidence and inspiration about where to go, where to look, and where to start. They can help you to break down and simplify really wicked problems. And by wicked problems, we mean problems that don't have easy solutions to them. They can help you to really prioritize in times of scarcity. I can't imagine how many times this over the pandemic, people have told me all of the ideas they have of what they can do next to help or deepen their impact, and really struggle just to know where to start. They can help you to reduce and minimize the risk of trying something new by doing that incremental test-based learning so that you're not putting huge punts out there without knowing whether or not it's likely to work. And it can also really help us all be really more mindful about what and how we rebuild. So the question to move now is, how do we start nurturing these design thinking mindsets in yourself and your organization and your nonprofit? I will caveat this section with, this is going to be a wayfinding section. We've only got half an hour left, so I won't be able to dig into all of the ins and outs of design thinking practice. But I hope this shows you some of the disciplines within design thinking that maybe you're already practicing in your organizations. It will help you decide which of the design thinking trainings you would like to go on to deepen some of your practice. And it also will show you where some of the design thinking practice and mindsets can really help with some of the challenges that you're facing right now. So the first element we've discussed, I think I've said this word a few times now, is paying attention. So this is going to be the theme of the second training, which is called Understanding the Changing Needs of People and Systems in Times of Uncertainty. I know that is like a super catchy title, apologies. This is going to be happening next week, Tuesday, again at 12 p.m. and is going to be led by a design thinker called Francisco, who's an incredibly talented designer and researcher. So this mindset is all about actively being open to learning and discovering things you don't know to help to see challenges from new points of view. It's about bringing new perspectives, ideas, and inspiration, especially from those who sit outside of your organization, although it's really important to also involve people that you work closely with too. Looking up and making connections. This is like about being aware of what's happening beyond your organizational walls. I know that we are all really important, we have important organizations with important work happening, but it's really about connecting to people on the outside. It's about working with and speaking with and involving those who are connected to the issue in some way, because they always have valuable evidence and insights and inspiration to give. And it's about seeking opinions and experience and priorities from the humans you work with and for, especially the people whose lives you seek to support. And this, especially the people that whose lives you seek to support, is something that Fan will be specifically focusing on during next week's talk. Some methods that Fan will be sharing next week or speaking about next week include depth interviews, ethnography, and peer research. Though I want to say that there are also a variety of other ways to pay attention to those outside of your organization. You can have informal chats, you can do social media listening, which doesn't have to be complex. It can just be stalking people on social media. You can do desk research. These are really all helpful ways to bring the outside in when you're grappling with big, tricky challenges. This mindset is especially useful to practice and nurture in order to gain clarity on an issue and the problem to be solved, to get insight into potential opportunities and solutions, and to gather inspiration to come up with new ideas. So I'm actually going to pause here and ask you all to get out a notebook or a piece of paper, whatever you have to hand, and draw a line on a new page. And on one end of the page, I would like you to put the number 1 and the other, the number 5. It should look something like the line on the screen. And I mean, I did this in a webinar the other day with an organization called Stride, which I know I mentioned before, and someone asked about. I'll send you a link to them. And I really liked it. So I'm just going to try it here to see if this is a good way to start thinking about these mindsets. So once you've drawn the line, and I'm assuming you all have had a chance to do that now, I'd like you to just reflect on and think about this question. How often are you personally in your organization paying attention to the people and perspectives outside? So how often are you paying attention to the people and perspectives outside of your organization? Use 1 for hardly ever and 5 for all the time. I'm going to pause there to give you a moment to think. So if this is something you'd like to start nurturing in your own organization, here's one thing that you can try to start you on the journey. This month, I challenge you to having 6 really short 15-minute conversations about a big challenge you're facing with one person, 6 people actually, outside of your organization. Of course, like, record it and take notes if you get permission from the person to record. I think that's a really good way to document these informal chats that we often have. And these informal chats are a really good but basic version of good design thinking practice, which you can use to get outside in perspectives and make that a more natural part of your day-to-day. So this month, if you are towards the 1 on the spectrum, I challenge you to have 6 15-minute conversations about a big challenge you're having in your organization. Okay, next mindset. Breaking down the challenge. So this is a theme of the third training, which is called Turning Data and Insights into Actionable Ideas for Adapting to Crisis. And that training is happening on Tuesday, the 17th at 12 p.m. and is led by Simon Herzog, who's actually formerly head of professional programs at the Copenhagen Institute of Interaction Design. It's a massive coup that we got him to take part. So you should really try to get to that training. And this mindset is all about being really specific and singular about your objectives. So this is about like taking on big challenges and just really being comfortable whittling them down into things that are manageable for you. It's about prioritizing the main thing rather than tackling everything at once. I know that we live in really complicated times. We live in really complicated sectors. We are doing really complicated work. But when we fail to focus on the main thing, we can become overwhelmed. And we know that we have limited time, limited budgets, and we also have limited emotional strength. So taking on everything is probably not the best way to help drive things forward. Working with others to slice down those big complex challenges in bite-sized chunks. Often I think we feel like we have to solve the problems, or at least ask the right questions ourselves. Talking with others, involving people from outside your organization is a really useful way to get people to slice the chunks down for you or with you, so that the onus isn't only on the people within your org. Being realistic and humble about what you could and should solve. I think this is something we could all be better at in the sector, really being mindful of when some parts of the problem or some challenges might be better suited to another organization or somebody else. And this is also about looking for opportunities and potential. One of the big things about this mindset, it's all about seeing the opportunities, not just the issues and the reasons why not and the barriers. So in Simon's talk, he'll be covering including how to move from a lot of data that you've probably gathered through informal conversations and interviews and surveys and observations and workshops. So all of that rich research that I think most of us are quite comfortable with, into how might we's. And I'll let him describe more what how might we statements are, but I'll say they're a really powerful way to slice problems down to make them more manageable. He'll also cover how you can prioritize what to focus on first. So this is like a really great training, and I think you should try to get to it. This mindset is especially useful to practice and nurture in order to get to easy, achievable next best actions for your work, manageable and concrete mini challenges to focus on in your organization as you adapt and respond to Black Lives Matter and the pandemic, and a prioritized list of smaller challenges to tackle that are manageable and meaningful for you right now. So let's get the scale out again, if you can. This time, the question is, how specific and manageable are the current challenges on your plate? And let's be realistic about this. Like, how specific and manageable are the current challenges on your plate? 1 is that they're not at all manageable and specific. And 5, they're totally manageable and they're totally specific. I'll give you a few minutes to jot that down. Okay, so if you're thinking of nurturing this in your organization, here's a challenge for you. Think of one of the big challenges you're facing in your organization and take time to write it down. Then underneath it, write all of the smaller sub-challenges that you can find within it. So an example, if I was trying to find a perfect new plant for my home, I think I mentioned I'm plant obsessed, I could take on all of that complexity at once, or I could break it down into things like find plants that need minimal light, find plants available in shops near me, find plants that aren't poisonous to be if they're eaten by babies, and that's the gist. So once you've broken that down as much as you can, ask someone who's linked to the challenge outside of your organization to tell you which one they think that you should be tackling first. Ask a few people, and then the one with the largest number of votes you should go for first. Right, moving along. Testing what works. This is a theme of the 4th training, which is called Rapidly Test Ways to Adapt Your Service in Fast Changing Times, which is happening on Tuesday the 24th at 12 p.m. It's led by Louise, who's an incredibly talented and experienced service designer at Shift. This mindset is all about figuring out the right answer by testing good enough guesses with real people in real life. So this isn't about being right first, it's about just taking a punt and seeing what happens. Sharing your ideas and work with others early to get quick and useful feedback, being more interested in proof than theory. And by that, we basically mean rather than speculating and talking about and theorizing about something, just put it out there, and then you've got more definitive proof that it does or doesn't work. And then being open to learning what does and doesn't work, which actually does sometimes mean seeing things fail. During the training, Louise is going to focus on testing through rapid prototyping, which is a really useful, quick and affordable way to test your early product and service tweaks or new ideas so that you can make changes and decisions with minimal cost and risk. And this mindset is especially useful to practice if you want concrete evidence of what does and doesn't work in practice in cheap and reliable ways, an indication of whether you're going to achieve your intended impact, and cheaper and less risky ways to try new things. So scale time again. This time the question is, how often do you test what does and doesn't work with others outside your org? So how often do you test what does and doesn't work with others outside your org? So if you'd like to start nurturing this in your organization, here's a simple thing to try. And apologies, this is really simple, I'm sure. But if you do have a great idea, write it down, get really comfortable writing it down in a short and succinct way, and just share it with people that you hope will use it, that you hope will buy it, that you hope will get it on board. And just listen to their feedback. And I know that sounds really simple, but that can actually be quite challenging. This isn't about justifying your idea. It's not about hearing like getting them to understand your point of view or being defensive about it. This is just about hearing their interpretation, their reaction, their perspectives. So just have that conversation with them and just take on board some of the things that they say. And I also recommend recording those conversations and making detailed notes. I say that because when we put things down on paper or when we make things tangible, we find them more easy to interrogate, interpret, share with others, and use them to make decisions in a concrete way. Right, final mindset, making it public. So I should say that there's a 5th training, which is about how to lead design projects, which I'm not covering today, but I'll share with you a bit at the end. And that's going to be really useful to deepen your learning journey. But this focused on making it public. Our 6th and final training, which is called Creating Effective Design and Digital Roadmaps to Adapt Your Service, is going to be focused on this. And this runs on Tuesday, the 8th of December, again at 12 p.m. And is led by the talented service designer, Rebecca Birch, who I actually think is on this call. And this mindset is all about putting things into the world before they're perfect. It's about launching minimal versions of products and services, and it's about working in the open and letting people know what you're working on as soon and as early as possible so that they can feedback on it, sign up to it, and get involved. During the training session, Rebecca will be sharing how to use roadmaps to go from ideas to action using things like open processes, prototypes, MVPs, to help you put things into the world before they're perfect. And this mindset is especially useful to practice and nurture in order to get quick and early feedback on your work, early and realistic indications of interest and uptake. I say this because although lots of the previous mindsets are about sharing your working without the outside world and bringing the outside in, you really never know what's going to happen until the rubber hits the road. So you can have lots of conversations and you can consult a lot, but if you don't put it out there, you don't really know. So it's also about attracting collaborators and partners and allies. When you put things out in the world early, people know what you're working on. They can come and say hello, and they can come and get involved. And then it's also useful if you're looking for less risky ways to try new things. You don't have to create the whole program, the whole website, the whole service or product. You can create it in smaller bite-sized ways, so that you can test if it's worth continuing down the line. Okay, so final one for the scale. This question to reflect on is, how often are you making ideas, products and services public before they're perfect in your organization? How often are you making ideas, products and services public before they are perfect in your org? I'll give you a few moments there. I realize I look like I'm drinking a pint of milk, but it's actually Huel, which is an adult choice. Okay, so if you're thinking about nurturing this in your org, here's one to try. Next time you're planning to launch something new, recruit a small subgroup of people who you would like to work with and who you think should be using the product or service later down the line. And ask them to try it during the stages before it's done. So just involve them all the way through and ask for their feedback and make small tweaks based on that feedback, so that you're involving them before it actually launches. So that's it. 4 mindsets: pay attention, break down big challenges, test what works, and put things into the world early. These are things you can start practicing instantly and you can develop in yourself and your organization every day. We hope that this training has shown you ways that you're already using some of these mindsets of design thinking. And also, I hope it pinpoints some ways you can deepen and nurture these mindsets in your work. So before we go to Q&A, I'd like everyone just to take a moment to pause and reflect with a few questions from me to you, a few more questions. And I'd actually like you to reflect on these either privately by yourself in your notebook, or feel free to reflect on them in the chat. So I'll give you a few minutes with each question, and then we'll go to Q&A. In which ways are you already practicing design thinking in your org? So feel free to write these down privately just for yourself, or if you feel like it, do share in the chat. The second question: what big organizational or sector-wide challenges could you and couldn't you see yourself and your team using design thinking to address? What big organizational or sector-wide challenges could you and couldn't you see your team using design thinking for? I'll give you a few minutes. And finally, and most crucially for your learning journey, I think, which design thinking mindsets are you currently most and least comfortable with? What's feeling natural and what currently fills you with dread? Thanks. Matt Smith, the first question is, in which ways are you practicing design thinking mindsets in your organization already? So I hear some people uncomfortable putting things out prematurely. I think that's a big one that is really challenging in design thinking. And I'll actually share some tips on that just now. Sometimes can be a perfectionist and shy about putting work out there before it's good. Working groups have been helpful. for some of the design thinking mindsets. However, been difficult to pick out manageable chunks. I think that's a really important one. Like sometimes we can consult and like it's not helping us to be more focused and more narrow. So I'm assuming others of you are reflecting on that personally and privately. So thank you to everyone who has shared your thoughts in the open. For those who have identified some design thinking mindsets that you're not comfortable with, I just wanted to, before we go to Q&A, share 4 things that have actually helped me over my 10 years as a design thinker. I am also a reformed perfectionist. I struggle with perfectionism every day, and it's something that design thinking helps me to practice. The first one is capitalize on your curiosity. So this is not about being the most intelligent or knowledgeable person in the room. It's not about being an expert. It's about being the most curious and inquisitive. So if you nurture your nosy side, it's a great way to get comfortable with design thinking. And it's an acknowledgement that if you don't know something, you can always get outside and find out. Practice getting feedback. Getting feedback and critique is really hard and exposing. I personally have a really interesting relation with feedback, which I'm developing over the years. But this is a really crucial and important part of our work. So this is something to practice and nurture. It's not only makes it easier to have a good idea, it really makes good ideas that we have much, much better. And practicing really seeking this feedback out and going beyond the usual suspects is a really useful way to do that. And really listening intently to what is being said and trying to take that in a nice and, way that doesn't impact your own sense of self, but really just sees it as a gift that helps you to grow and understand the things that are working and the things that might not be. Get used to working in the open. This is one of the best things about design thinking. It's that it challenges you to get outdoors. It does not reward you for perfecting things in the comfort of your office or in your home. So practicing working in the open so that people can just see you working and bump into your work and offer you thoughts and perspectives and ideas and watch outs. And finally, I've really benefited from rebuilding my relationship with fails. No one likes to put their name or face or their brand to something that is wrong or would go wrong. But finding safe ways to test things that may or may not go well is a great way to avoid more costly mistakes down the line. And this is especially useful at times like these, when it's important, I think, to be frugal. And it sounds like a cliche, but as the quote says, we really do learn more from failure than we do from success. So this is really one to nurture. Okay, so it's about that time. That was your introduction to design thinking. I hope you did find it really useful and found it a good whistle-stop tour of the introduction to the 4 design thinking mindsets: paying attention, breaking down big challenges, testing what works, and putting things into the world early. A really powerful tool in the massive complex challenges that we're all facing day to day. So that's it from me in terms of content. I'd love to turn it over to you all for a few minutes of Q&A.
Hi everyone, if you'd like to share a question with Teo, you can post it in the chat or you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens. Teo, there's a couple of things that have come up in the chat that I wanted to pose to you.
Yes,
so one of those was about how uncomfortable people feel about spending their kind of time and resource on this sort of design thinking process when they're struggling to cover business as usual. So I wondered if you could just maybe give us a bit of a context for how it would be a useful thing to use.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think that's why I frame these as mindsets. Design thinking can often be thought of as a process, and it is a process and can be used as such. But I think every day in all of our organizations, when we are busy and stretched, we are coming across these big, complex problems. And I think if you break down the mindsets and use some of them in appropriate times, it can actually help you to waste less time, waste less money. It's why I gave one of the examples of the 15-minute chat. That's something you can do on the fly over the summer. One of my design projects, rather than doing a big laborious process, I just spent time in the back of my mum's garden, pacing up and down, having conversations with people. And that's like not more time, really. It's just additional input to my thinking. So it's time I would have been spent like grappling with this question myself. I just brought people into the problem with me, shared what I was grappling with, and let them contribute. So there's lots of the bits of design thinking that I hope will be useful for you as you are grappling with scarce time and resources. And things, especially like testing things early and quick, I think are very much more vital at this time, where business and usual is important. We all have had to adapt and change. So as you are adapting and changing, using those test-based mechanics to just see what will and won't work, so that you don't put all of your eggs in a basket that ends up not being fruitful.
And then, Taya, we've seen quite a lot of a few people worrying about giving an idea while testing. It's that testing you're talking about, and then or putting the ideas out early, and then maybe those being used or stolen by other people. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I remember when I was at the very beginning of my career, I was setting up a few startup ventures, and that was one of my biggest concerns, that people would steal my idea. And I think I understand the sentiment, and I've understood it all the way through to now working in the non-for-profit sector, where a lot of the time our behaviours are driven by funding mechanics, where we have to have something unique that we're offering to a social issue so that we can attract funding. I think it's a bit philosophical, but personally, it is important for us to be comfortable in environments like this, where we are trying to drive real change for real humans, to share those ideas. The likelihood of someone stealing it is probably less than someone wanting to work with you and collaborate. There are going to be odd times when your idea is taken forward by someone else, but if it's an idea that your organization is best placed to deliver, if your organization has the best assets to deliver it, then it is impossible for you to not play a role in delivering that idea to the world. So I would say it's a legitimate challenge. It's one I hope that we can continue to wrestle with ourselves in aid of bigger social impact issues. And it's also one where the potential risk, I think, outweighs the reward. Sharing means that you're more likely to get the idea done, created, having an impact for real humans. And I think that the odd small examples of where that goes wrong shouldn't be where we focus our energies and efforts.
I think you've got a question in the Q&A, Taya.
So I see one question in Q&A and one question in the chat. In the chat, I see, how do you have any tips for getting buy-in and support from those particularly colleagues you need to work with who are uncomfortable doing things before it's figured out? One of the beautiful things about the design thinking mindsets and the design thinking processes is that they're all designed to foster buy-in from colleagues, senior management, from the people that you're working with and for, from partners. So that collaborative element is the route to buy-in. So when you involve people, your colleagues, in conversations, when you involve them with conversations with people outside of your organization, it's not only you whose mindsets and perspectives are being altered, it's also theirs. And that's one of the beautiful magics of the design thinking mindsets in the process, that it is all designed to foster collective buy-in as you move through processes. Bye, Lindsay. In the Q&A, is it possible to automate and embed these elements within our customer journeys, like permanent feedback loops? That's a great question, Jane. I love that question. Yes, I feel like I'm gonna pull back from presenting the utopia of design thinking today, because I think that's not necessary, and also maybe a bit further down the journey than some people will be on. But in a utopia, which we won't dwell on too much today, finding ways to make this a natural part of your day-to-day business is really useful. And I think many of you will already have things like this and mechanics in place. How are you constantly feeding in the voice of your end users? How are you constantly feeding in the voice of your partners and your colleagues and your other departments? How are you using that to process that information, to break down your smaller challenges? And how are you testing things in smaller ways that don't have to make it a big deal, a big process, but it's just day-to-day business? I would say it's great to have a vision like that, but also there are many incremental steps towards that vision that can have a massive and dramatic impact on your ability to break down complexity and make good progress. We've got 4 minutes left, so I'm going to field maybe the last 2 questions in the Q&A. I find it a bit challenging to talk to our beneficiaries, women with maternal mental health problems, about what they need or want from our service. Often they don't know they need us. Any ideas? I think this is a really important part of what I hope we bring by talking about mindsets. A lot of talk in the sector is about putting people in the lead. And about human-centered design. And I'll just caveat with, I'm not a human-centered designer, because I think while I believe in putting humanity at the center of innovation, that doesn't mean that we should put all the onus of having the answers on the humans. And by the humans, I mean the end people that we're hoping to support. The answers and the clues can come from all over the sector. So while I think there are questions you should be asking to your to women who are experiencing mental health conditions about how they want to be interacted with, what they enjoy outside of in their day-to-day lives, what really resonates with them, what brands they love. You might not need to ask them other things that maybe commissioners have a better answer for, or your colleagues or experts or researchers. So really just thinking about all of the clues that you can start picking up and how they can help you to slice down problems, I think is a better way to think of it than just your end beneficiaries. Bye, Teo. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining. And then the final question before we wrap, any tips on breaking into manageable parts? I think I need more detail there. I'm not sure how to answer that question, but I hope some of the tips on how you can start to practice some of the mindsets were useful, and or the subsequent trainings that are coming up, which I'll talk about now, might help you to do that, breaking it into more manageable parts. So up next, if you do want to go further with this thinking, this has been a whistle-stop tour to share with you what design thinking is, not necessarily how to practice it in detail. There are 5 more trainings coming in the series. The next one is on Tuesday, the 10th at, nope, I've done something very horribly wrong to the screen. I'm so sorry. Nope, not sure. Apologies. So next up is training on Tuesday the 10th. This one is focused on that paying attention mindset, which is called Understanding the Changing Needs of People and Systems in Times of Uncertainty. It is going to be led by the brilliant Fan Cisco, who was previously at Shift and also has consulted for Design Council and FutureGov. And she'll be taking you through how to really bring empathy and work with end users to understand their needs in this work. So thank you so much for joining. Remember, you can sign up to all the trainings at joinbeyond.org. I really hope that you found the session useful and a good jumping off point. And I hope to see you at a future session or talk or workshop or beyond training sometime soon. I'm going to hand over to Emily.
Thank you, Teo. Yeah, I really enjoyed that session. I hope our attendees did too. And I wanted to thank all of you guys that joined today as well for your questions, for the challenges you shared, and for taking part. Teo's given you a bit of a taster of what's coming up on the training program, and I also wanted to point you towards a couple of events that we've got coming up in addition to our training. So next Tuesday, the 10th of November at 4 p.m, we're going to have an all things digital talk with Anne Deer from Snook. Snook is a design studio that's witnessed organisations realise that they're not defenceless or toolless in the face of this crisis, and they've been able to adapt to everything that's been thrown at them. But she's taking this as a moment to look at how to make those quick fixes more robust and find new ways of working going forward. And then on the 12th of November for financial wellbeing, and on the 19th of November for early years, we've got an exciting organisational design workshop coming up with our very own Nick Stanhope from Shift. He's going to be looking at how to make plans for our organisations when everything feels unknown and changeable. It's going to be a really interactive workshop to help you apply a lightweight approach and equip you to identify your priorities and take small and practical steps and continue to learn and adapt in the face of uncertainty. There are going to be limited places for those workshops, so please sign up quickly, and you can find details for the training and also those events I've just mentioned on the Beyond website. Thank you everybody for joining. Yeah, hopefully see you next week.